tired of me. I'm Anthony Luscre. I'm Eric's co-partner at Spark. We share the same little corner of the office and create havoc all the time. Eric is off at another assignment today, and he emailed me yesterday and asked if I could come in and take care of this, and I was thrilled to do that. I'll also be here on November 8th for your Tech Day. Before I get started, I have this list of questions. Does anyone want to? Did anyone submit any of these questions, or does anyone want to? Can't see them.
Did the form on the top section?
I'm going to cover. Did you have any questions on this session at all? Okay, then I'm going to cover some questions that some people put here and some questions from last time also that you might find useful. The first question is, how do I clean up my shared folder? Don't waste any time in your shared folder. Think of your shared folder as the mailbox out at the road. If you open up things and try and organize things and you have stacks of in and out boxes in your mailbox out at the road, what happens? Well, the mail person comes around, puts something in there, you don't know what's in there, or if you're opening your mail and reading it on the way back to the house, it gets lost. So think of this shared box as your mailbox at home. You don't do anything with it until you get it in the house. And what I mean by that is take things from your shared folder and put them where you want them. It doesn't take them out of the shared folder, it just simply makes a copy of it in a different location. So in my shared folder, I have millions of things, and there was no way I'd ever clean this up. And the moment I would get it cleaned up, someone would take a file that they shared with me and unshare it with me, and it disappears from there. So don't waste any time. Spend your time instead in organizing your drive. And there's a couple things that you can do to organize your drive. You notice you can color code folders by right-clicking on it. So you can come down here, you can add a color, you can add a star. If you add a star, it will show up in the starred folder. So things that you're working on currently, you might want to have a star on them. You can also use your recent folder to find things. I only have 20 or 30,000 documents. I'm serious. There's so many documents there, it's unbelievable. Before I retire in December, I'm going to have to go through all these. But organize your stuff in your drive and not in your shared with me. Now, a couple real quick things you might not realize about moving files around. Notice I have too many folders to even get down to my files. I can move a file from right here a couple different ways. I can grab it and I can drag it over into my drive, and my drive expands and I can move it into any folder I want. So for my shared folder, I can simply take the items from my shared folder and move them into whatever folder I want to. The alternative way, if you're not a drag and drop type of person, you can right click on it. And when you right click on it, you have the ability to go to Move To. When you go to Move To, it brings up this little window, and you can navigate to wherever you want to put it. And then click the blue Move button. And I'm going to show you guys a parlor trick that I forgot to show the first group, so you can impress your friends at parties. Did you know that you can put a Google file in 2 different places at the same time? If you do that same little move thing, let's say I want the same file, and I don't want to make a copy of it. I want the same file so it stays exactly the same. But I want it in one folder where people have editing rights, and I have it in another folder where I only want those people to be able to view it. So I can actually have a folder in file in 2 different folders. If you do the same exact thing as we did before, click on the file, but before you do anything else, hold down the Shift key and the Z key. I know it's weird because it's usually Control key or alternate key, but once you're clicked on that, notice what happened. I didn't touch anything else except for the Shift, and it brings up this little box down here. Now instead of being blue and saying Move Here, it now says Add Here, so we can add that file. And the reason for why we can do that is these files don't really exist on your computer. They're just simply pointers to a file up on the cloud somewhere. So all we're doing is like making a second shortcut to a file and putting it in 2 different folders. Does that make sense? So now you can tell your friends that weren't here at this session that you know how to put files in 2 different places. So I would not worry about the shared folder. Someone asked a question about, I want to know practical uses for each of the Google products. And that's a really general question, but I'm guessing that they want to know about the different types of documents you can create. I don't think I need to tell you about word processing documents, and I may not need to teach you about presentation documents. But the one thing you can do, try and get rid of this frog in my throat, is you can utilize presentations to create a lot of different things. So you could use it as a standard presentation. You can use it as a study guide where each slide has different information on it. And also, because you can't do some fancy things in Google Docs, like put borders around things or put special things on a Google Doc, you can actually do it on slides and then just print out the slide if you'd like. I'm guessing the part that most people don't use, how many use spreadsheets? What all do you teach? Math?
Phys ed.
Phys ed? Oh, phys ed, you got to use spreadsheets for phys ed. Matter of fact, I'm going to doing a presentation this afternoon at 4:30 on using spreadsheets in phys ed. But spreadsheets are probably the one Google product you haven't thought about using, but there's so many different things you can do with spreadsheets. You can actually pre-build a spreadsheet where students put in the information. You can use spreadsheets to do math, which is what most people think of. But you can also use spreadsheets to organize and help students study. For example, I have a spreadsheet for language arts that has nothing to do with numbers. And this also works with science. It works with any subject area, actually. And this is probably the easiest thing you can do with spreadsheet that you probably did not realize how easy it is to do. I have a column here, and these could be chemical elements, they could be places, they could be things. So I have all my characters listed on the left. Across the top I have all my headers for all my characteristics. So if these were animals, they could be like fins, scales, feathers, whatever. I'm going to turn this off for just one second here real quick. Okay, so I have this list. And this list is pretty short, but if I wanted to find out everyone who was a friend of Juliet, let me zoom in. You guys probably can't see that. If I want to find out everyone who's a friend of Juliet, I can simply click on the top row here, go up to Data, go to Filter, and from there I can simply choose these little drop downs. So I can go to Friend of Juliet, clear everything, and just say I only want to see friends. Now watch what happens to my spreadsheet. It hides all the rows where Juliet is not a friend. Now I want to find out who everyone that dies who's a friend of Juliet. So I can come over here to lives or dies. And it zooms it down. So you can use spreadsheets for sorting, filtering, narrowing down things. I have a spreadsheet that has 8,000 rows on it of people from the Olympics, all sorts of statistics. I can quickly find everyone who's 15 years old who won a gold medal in swimming. Because each one of these keeps narrowing it down more. But you can do that for any subject area.
You can use that in law enforcement.
Absolutely. Exactly, and it never gets rid of them. You're going to scare yourself once you start using this, because if I close this file now and reopen it, it's going to look like this. And the way I can tell that it's filtered is, notice my little filters are green and the other ones are blue. So I can simply go back and turn them off. I can simply go back in and say I want to select all and have it show all of them. Or I can simply go up to the top like I did earlier. Click that row, go back up to Data and turn filtering off. And once I turn filtering off, it'll show everyone.
So, for your Olympic example,
Yes.
who put all that data in?
Grabbed it from the web.
And you were able to just
Paste it in.
spreadsheet,
Yep.
with a click?
Yep. So here's all the spreadsheet data. I fancied it up a little bit. And if I wanted to come in here again, I can choose it, turn this, click on row 1, turn on filtering. Now this takes a little while because it's 8,000 rows. Notice it's loading up there. And I can come down here and I can say I only want to see archery. and that'll show me all the medals that are won in archery. And I only want to find people that won a gold medal. So I can go through here and clear the 0 out of gold medals, and this will show me everyone who's won at least won a gold medal.
I understand how to manipulate the sheet.
Okay.
Like, our issue most of the time is the amount of time it takes to enter all the data.
Okay.
To then be able to manipulate it and take a look at it and then decide how that's going to affect our teaching and all that stuff. So, why I asked that question is, so did you just go like to a website that had Olympic
data
results?
Yep.
And then
in this particular case, I downloaded it, but in a lot of cases, you can just simply copy it and paste it into your spreadsheet. Okay. The trick is when you
spreadsheet basically takes it from whatever format it was in.
It tries to. Let me show you 2 tricks you might want to try. Once you have a bunch of data, instead of just pasting it right here, you want to right-click on it and choose Paste Special Values Only, and that'll try and strip out all the formatting. Gotcha. So if it doesn't work the first time, do it that way. Now, a lot of times what you end up with things like this. It'll have like the person's first name, their last name, their art sport, the date, and the types of medals. And what happens is when you paste it in there, it all ends up in one column. Right. You ever have that happen before? Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to split that apart. Excel calls the text to columns. Google calls it splitting. So if I have everything in one column, I can break it out. It's called parsing. Break it out. And in Google Sheets, I use a function called split. I tell it which cell I want to split. I put a comma in, and then I tell it, what is it separated by? Is it separated by commas? Is it separated by spaces? Is it separated by whatever? I'm going to say that it's separated by spaces, so I'm going to put in quote space, and watch what happens. It splits all my data out. Now, if I had 100,000 rows, I could simply click on this and send it all the way down to the bottom, and it would split all those out. Need to do one more step first, though, because watch what happens if I delete this. It all goes away. So I need to do one final step, and you need to do this a lot of time in spreadsheets. When you've calculated things, you need to go back in and copy everything that you've calculated, copy it, and then you do the paste special values again, and it strips out the formula and just leaves the actual text behind. Now I can go in and delete this, and it'll stay there. Because it's not a formula result, it's actually the information in the form. There are 2 webinars on spreadsheets in the spreadsheet section. So if you're not used to using spreadsheets, this one right here, Spreadsheets 101, starts with the very basic things. This is a cell, this is a row, this is a column, this is how you name them, these are how you put in formulas, these are how you put in functions, and then the second one goes more into a variety of different functions. So I would really suggest thinking about spreadsheets for your class. And please, I'll make sure my email is available in the class. You're welcome to email me. If you have a class and you're looking for ideas using spreadsheets or any of the other tools, I'll be happy to help you out on that. Because I have a lot of practical examples. I don't have time to show you them all, but I have many, many things. So like I have one on phys ed where we're going to lay out a football field based on the distance between each of the planets and the relative size of each planet. By the way, if you do it to scale, Pluto is about 1/3 of a yard in from the end zone, and Mercury's about 1/3 of the yard in from the end zone, and Pluto's 89 yards out. So you can do that. But spreadsheets are a really neat way to work with things. Eric has a whole section on using this Google tools called Google Drawings, which is sort of ignored a lot of times. He has a couple of webinars here on using them for graphic organizers and also using them to teach math. So there's a lot of different uses for some of the tools that you might not think of. Now the group of 4 had a lot of questions about quizzes, about using forms for quizzes. Have any of you started using forms at all? Tell me some of your experiences. How's your experience been with forms so far? Good things, bad things? Frustrating. What part was frustrating?
Well, so I've done it a couple different ways. I teach algebra too. So the first thing I did was I created a student procedure quiz at the very beginning of the year, and it was just did you read the syllabus? Do you understand policies? That kind of basic stuff.
Yes.
Some of my kids, and this might have been a district thing, but a lot of times the form itself would time out. I was having the kids try and fill those in, like in the classroom. Half of them could access the quiz, half of them couldn't, and I didn't know if that was maybe a district thing where the Chromebooks were being slow. So I know that there's been some adjustments since the beginning of the year.
It could be. It's uncommon that happens, but I have seen a case where many people are using the same form at the same time that causes problems. But I've actually seen cases where we used the form for 500 people at the same time in the same location, and it worked just fine.
Okay.
So typically it's not a problem. Typically that's not a problem. That's atypical
Okay.
kind of problems.
I mean, because it was just my class of 30, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's a huge number of people using that particular form. So I got frustrated at that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this again, do a homework kind of quiz, where they would actually write it out on paper, and then they would just type their answers in the form. And so then I had that same issue where sometimes the Chromebooks weren't accessing the form, some of them weren't.
Well, unfortunately, that's an issue I'm not going to be able to deal with.
That's okay. I mean, you asked me what my...
No, but anything's actually with the form itself. Any issues with the form itself, or your ability to ask the questions you want to do, or the ability for them to answer the questions?
If you do an extended response,
yes.
They don't answer it exactly as you type the answer it marks it wrong. So I feel like you have to leave those ungraded and go back and grade them.
Correct.
It doesn't lend itself to making accommodations for a kid with an IEP, that it has to all be the same questions. I had difficulty transferring it to progress book, so after about 4 times I gave up and went back to paper and pencil.
Okay.
It was taking me more time because I have to write on a piece of paper what they got, put it in the Google sheet, and then go back to progress book and put it in there, and I could have graded them by hand and had that done like way before I did all that.
Well, extend a response is very difficult to grade. There are some tricks you can do, but they're probably not worth the time that you'd put into it. You can do things like search for certain keywords and give them points based on the number of keywords they hit. There's some things you can do, but they're convoluted. So you're probably not going to want to use forms for that purpose for extended responses that are graded automatically. It's perfectly good for extended responses, but the problem you run into when you do extended responses might be something like this. I'm in the wrong one. I'm going to find one that has really extremes in the form here. While I'm waiting for that to load, if you have, come on. By the way, in Drive, let me just show you this one in Drive. You can make it easier to find things in Drive. Have you guys seen this part of Drive yet? Have you explored this part, the searching tool? I can go in and say I only want to find spreadsheets, or I only want to find forms, or I only want to find specific things. I can say who it's from, what the item name is, whether it has the words, doesn't have the words, whether I'm the owner, etc. Okay, so here's the presentation proposals for a conference. Let me find a recent one here. Okay, so people put in the information for this conference, and this is an example where there's a lot of wrong responses. So if I go over to the responses and I try and go through this way by individual people, it's going to be kind of difficult. If I go in here under spreadsheets, it's also going to be kind of difficult, because what I'm going to see is a lot of text in each of the boxes. And if I don't make them wide enough, they get really tall, and it gets hard to see who's who, and some of them don't fit in one page. So what you can do is you can use an add-on, and add-ons are things that you add to your spreadsheets one time, then you can use it over and over again. There's an add-on on here, and I need to zoom out a little bit so you can see it. Too far. This add-on is called Save as doc. And what that does is it creates a Google document for each line. So for each student's quiz, it would show the whole quiz as a document as opposed to a spreadsheet. So then it's much easier to grade extended responses because you can take the whole sheet and you can actually print it out and circle things and do things on it that you can't really do within a spreadsheet very easily. You can also
return that to the students so that they could see what they missed.
Absolutely.
Because that's the other thing I don't like about it. It just returns their grade. And so, like, I had a parent who wanted to see, so I went through the spreadsheet and I was copying and pasting my response and theirs, and I'm like, I thought, this is nuts. This is not making it easier. I am going back to paper and pencil.
Save as doc will let you print these out. So if I went in here, for example, and say save as doc, what it's going to do is it's going to generate a document for each one. And I can choose whether I want the headings. I probably do want the headings because each person's, and I can come in here and say what styles I want. And I can put a page break after each row, which you normally would do, so each person has a page. I'm going to save as a doc. I got to give it a title. And it takes a few seconds. This is a pretty big one. There we go. We open the document. Now when we open it, it's not going to look like a spreadsheet. It's going to look like a word processing document. And I might have told it something weird here. What did I tell it that generated that? Good headings. Try that one more time. I'm not sure why it generated that weird looking doc. Oh, I didn't have the spreadsheet highlighted. That's the problem. Let me try that one more time. You have to tell it which rows you want. And I want all the rows, so I'm just going to click right here. And it should take a little longer this time. While it's taking longer, the other thing you can do with your forms is, I'm not sure if you guys realize that you can do a couple things very special with forms using sections and using text validation. And I'll show you those in a second when this document opens up. So notice what happens now. Instead of having that big long things I had before, each person, each row is still loading. Each row has a page that goes along with it that shows you the information. So for example, this person is Megan Brown, or Brandon, and it shows each of the questions and the answer to each of them. So that's called Save as Doc, and it's an add-on you can use so that you convert your spreadsheets into a document. Now, I was talking with another group about a couple things on forms. And when we're working with our form, in addition to asking questions, whenever we ask a question, let's throw that question away, we'll ask a new one. Whenever we ask a question, we can come in here and use something called data validation. And it's right at the bottom here, these three little dots. So let's say this is a math problem, and I want to give them some very specific information. What did I do here? Oh, I'm sorry, I got to choose the right type of question. Short answer. I go to data validation, and I have a couple choices. I can say that it has to be a number, and if it's a number, I can say what it's in. So I can actually have it so they cannot move forward until they put the right answer in on a math quiz. Or I could put it in a range, so they might not be able to put the right answer in, but they might have missed it, but it still lets them go on to the next one because it's an acceptable answer. So I could have it between these. I could have it be exactly a number. I can also use this for a non-math quiz or for a math quiz to put a password at the very beginning of the quiz. The first question might be enter a number, and I would put in here that's exactly equal to, and so when they would get the quiz, it'd say enter the code. When they type in a number, if it's not the code number I've given them, they can't go any further. So I could have I can change the code number throughout the day for each of my groups so that they wouldn't be able to pass it on, so people can get in the code in the quiz ahead of time and work on it before they're in my class. So you can use this validation tool for a lot of different things. There's some other validations that you can do on this one. In addition to number, you can also go in for text and say, for example, the text has to contain certain words, it can't contain certain words, it can be so long. You can have maximum character count, say they're only allowed to give 30 characters for their answer. So each of the different types of quiz questions has different validation tools with it. The second thing you can do with a form is you can go in and you can add a section. Notice we had a question here, but we had a section right here. Can everyone see that? When I do that, it creates sections. Now the sections might make it nice to be able to see each of my parts of my quiz, but they're actually much more powerful. If I create a section called A, and I come down and create another section called B, I can actually create a question here called, let's change this to multiple choice. Actually, I'm going to add a question here. That's the title of my form. So I'm going to add a question. And my question is going to be, da, 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 da. And the question is, the two choices are either A or B. So what I can do then is I can base A, B. I can choose to use branching. So for example, if they answer A, it can bring them to one section. If they answer B, it can bring them to a different section. And the way we do that is simply by going down to our little dots again and go down here to section based on answer. So I can then tell them, I can then say, if you answered A, I want you to go to section A. If you answer B, I want it to go to section B. So this way you can skip over questions you don't need, or if they understand, if they have the right answer for the question, it could jump them past all the rest of the questions. So let's say you gave them 20 multiplication questions, and at the 10th question, if they answered the 10th question correctly, it skipped the next 10 questions and went into division. So you can use this for branching. You can branch as many times as you want. You can branch based on multiple choice. You can branch based on, I think you can do it on drop down and check boxes, but you can't do it on short answer, of course, because it can't understand what you're looking for. Those are a couple things that might be helpful as far as setting up different types of questions. Yes?
I was wondering, like, if after you got this form and graded, is there a way of knowing, like, what was the most common missed question? What was that response?
Yes.
When I'm doing math and stuff, I have a mental idea of which problem they missed the most, what was that response, and then I know what I got to fix.
Exactly. And to really be able to do that, you're going to need to rely on some add-on tools. Now you do get a summary of the quiz here when you go to the responses. Let me go back here to this other one I have open. I do get some responses from some response data on my questions in the form of they moved this 1 second here. Let me just remember where they moved it to. It's not there. But you can get some simple information. There should be an Explorer button down here I'm not seeing. But to really get any kind of in-depth, I would suggest something like Flubaroo, which is an add-on that you can use for forms. Flubaroo lets you grade quizzes, more complicated quizzes, because the quiz grading tool in forms was only about 3 or 4 months old. Before that, if you wanted to grade your quiz, Flubaroo was probably the best thing to use, and it's an add-on. And there's a whole webinar on using forms for assessments, and it talks about Flubaroo in detail. And Flubaroo will do things like give you statistical analysis on each question, give you statistics on all the responses for various things, give you a class average for the whole test, give you the mean, the mode. You can extract all that data from Flubaroo and use it very easily. So if you want numerical data, you probably want to use Flubaroo to grade your quiz as opposed to having forms graded itself. Because forms only gives you a very rudimentary, like a pie chart or something like that. Does that make sense? Are you familiar with Flubaroo? Okay, so Flubaroo is an add-on that you have to add on, and Flubaroo works in the responses spreadsheet as opposed to in the form itself. So even though we're using it with a form, we have to actually add it to the spreadsheet responses. So we go in here to our response sheet, and we go to the spreadsheet for our responses. we have to go here to our add-ons right here, and we need to get an add-on, and you see all the way down at the bottom it says get add-on. I gotta zoom out a little bit here because I'm in too close. So down here it says get add-ons, and you want the one called Fubaru. When you click on it, it's going to say, it's going to have a big free here. I already have it installed, but this is how you would install it. And then you can run Fubaru from your spreadsheet. Fubaru lets you do things too, like send out the results like Quizzes does, but it also lets you do things like later send out results based on comments that you put in addition. It'll also let you do send out responses again if you have to regrade the test for some reason. Let's say after you went through the whole quiz, you found out there was a question that was invalid. You can go back and tell Fubaru that's an invalid question. Please regrade the whole thing and resend out all the information. So Fubaru is much more powerful as a way to grade the quizzes than the building little grading tool. Does that make sense? And again, I'm going to keep referring back to the webinars that we have available. This one right here, actually these two both have information on assessments using Google Forms. And this one right here for add-ons, and this one right here for advanced assessment talks about the ways you can use Fubaru to work with things. But it is actually a spreadsheet add-on, but there's nothing about it in the spreadsheet add-ons because it was covered under the forms. Going back to our little list here from before. Someone asked a question about using Adobe products with Google. I'm not sure what they meant, but I want to show you something you might not realize is there. In Google Drive, when you upload something, matter of fact, remember you can upload anything you want. If I upload a PDF file, that's a really bad one, that's a real messy one. If I upload a PDF file, when I upload it, if I double click on it, it'll show me a preview. And the reason why I know it's a preview is in that black box, but I can't do anything else with it except for share it, print it, or view it. Okay, and those are right up here where the print and the share buttons and all that are at. But if I go back to my PDF and I right click on it, everyone get this, watch, you're gonna miss it, you're gonna miss it. Right click on the PDF and then go down here to open with, and I choose Google Docs. It will actually run optical character recognition on that PDF and convert it into a Google document that I can edit. Now your results may vary depending on how the PDF was laid out as far as fonts, colors, styles. So we get all the text there, but there's some big gaps because the original article had some big pictures in the background. But this now allows us to go in here and edit this just like it's a regular document. And you can even take things that you've handwritten, scan them, import them as a PDF, and run this on it. And if you have good handwriting, you'll actually even take handwritten results and turn them into Google Docs. So that might be one of the things they were talking about with PDFs. The second thing with PDFs is everything, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Docs, all have the ability to come down here and download the item as a PDF. Now also notice they also have the ability to download it as the corresponding Microsoft product. So let's say I wanted to create a Word document and share it with someone. I can come down here and click on this and create a Word document. Then the next thing is if I have a Word document, let me upload a Word document here. I don't know what any of these are, but I'm just going to open one. Again, if I double click on it, notice how it has a W on it to tell me that it's not a doc, but it's a Google, that it's a Microsoft product. When I double click on it, it can't open it. It can only preview it. So there's the preview of it. But just the same way I did with the PDF, I can go down here and right-click on it and say Open With and choose Google Docs, and it will convert it from a Microsoft document to a Google Doc. And it does a pretty good job. There's a couple things it can't do. It can't do tight wrapping, and it can't do fancy borders around the outside, so sometimes those things will be missing. But in this case, this was a purely a text document, and it looks like all the bullets came along pretty well. There's a pretty big gap there. I'm not sure why. And as a table even came out okay. So it's pretty good at converting. As far as converting from the Microsoft products, Excel is almost 100% conversion to Google Sheets. Docs is probably 85 to 90%, and slides are probably 50 to 60% depending on how you created them originally. And the problem with slides is if you type in your slide and you let the slide font adjust automatically as you get more letters, it doesn't work well. If you would actually set the font style, you'll get a better 90% carryover from slides to sheet. I'm sorry, from PowerPoint to slides. So does all that make any sense? Remember also in Drive, you can upload anything and share anything without it even being a Google document. So let's say I had this Word document here. If I want to share this with someone, I can simply come up here, right-click on it, and choose Share. Now, when they get it, if they want to open a Microsoft Word, they have to have Word installed on their computer, or they have to convert it. Someone talked in the first group to ask about sharing files. They found the really good article, and they've created a file, and they wanted to share it with their colleague who taught the same subject. And her question was, should I make a copy of it and give her the copy? Because she may want to change it. And the answer is no. You want to share it with them with view-only capability, and then they can make their own copy, and they can work on it and do anything they want with it. Now, the other question that came up is, can I prevent someone from sharing something and I share with them with another person? And yes, you can. This is within the last probably 2 years they've added this ability. So when you go to share, if you click on the advanced button, you'll see down here at the bottom, there's 2 extra boxes. And those 2 extra boxes let us choose a couple things. The first one prevents someone from sharing it with someone else. The second box prevents them from being able to download it and or print it or copy it. So they can't go file, make a copy. So if I do either of those 2 things, it limits what other people can do with it. The other thing is, the only person that can do that is the owner of a document. Now, the owner is the only person that can also actually delete the document completely. Anyone else can delete anything on the document. We can always get it back through revision history, but only the owner can actually delete a document. If you create a document in your personal Gmail account and you want to use it in school, if you would share it with editing capability, you cannot transfer ownership because ownership only transfers within the same domain. So if you have a document that you create here in Green Local and you have a document in Green Local, you can actually give the ownership to someone else. But you can't do that with a document from outside of your domain. You'd have to make a copy of it, and then you'd have a copy within the domain.
How do we get ownership back if that happens?
They have to give it back to you.
Because that's exactly what happened with our lesson plans. We turned in our lesson plans off of Google Drive, and now the principal is the owner, and we can't edit our document. And then we learned that we can't send it off of Google Drive to go back and send it off of Word, but for the learning curve, the first several lesson plans now, she is the owner, and we can't edit.
2 things. One, if you want ownership back, the owner is the only person that can pass the ownership on to someone else. So when you give ownership away, one thing that's going to ask you is, are you sure you want to do this? Because you will lose the ability to ever have ownership again unless the other person gives it back to you.
I remember being asked that.
It does ask.
It says turn in, and
Turn
you turn
in,
it in,
so
and it
you
says
Oh, wait.
And it's
mark
gone.
done.
Turn in is different. Let me explain a second. When I'm talking about this, I'm outside of Google Classroom. Once I get in Classroom, all the rules change.
Yeah.
Because if I assign a document to someone, they get an extra button called Turn In that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about right now. Here's what actually happens in Google Classroom. Before Google Classroom, if I wanted you all to work on a worksheet, I would create one and share it with you with view-only capability. You would then need to make your own individual copy so you could edit it. When you were done editing it, you would have to provide me as a teacher editing rights to it so I could grade it. In Google, and then I'd also have to keep track of all of them. In Google Classroom, it works this way. I create one document and say who I want it to go to, and it automatically creates the copies. It automatically shares them back to me, in addition to giving them editing capability. So both those things, that's why Classroom works so well as far as having assignments. So if I want to assign something to a whole class, it can go out, they all get their individual copies. Also, it creates a folder for that particular assignment, and inside that folder, it contains all the files that were turned out, that were created by the students. So Classroom gets you through all that sort of issue, but it doesn't really change the way you might want to deal with an individual document. Does that answer your question about ownership?
Well, basically, we just shouldn't ever submit it from our Google Drive.
Exactly, that's what we learned.
That's what we've learned. And that doesn't, I mean, it didn't really, we learned the hard way.
Well,
We asked for those to be returned, but that hasn't happened.
So, I mean, luckily, everything that I have on my Google Drive was uploaded from my district file, so I still have a backup somewhere.
all they need to do is share it with you, though.
Google Drive, because you can work on all that stuff anywhere. The problem is I can't turn it in from my Google Drive because then it's not mine anymore.
Well, turning it in, so you want to share it instead of turning it in.
Yeah, but we don't have that option because she makes it an assignment for us to turn in.
Okay.
So the only way we can do our lesson plans is by turning it in.
Well, then all she needs to do, though, is when she's done, she just needs to return them all to you.
Yeah, well, she's not going to do that. I mean, I agree with you, but that has yet to happen, and we're 9 weeks in.
Okay, well, that's it.
Still don't make a copy of it.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's still there.
You can make a copy of
Not
it.
access. Before you turn it in, you need to make a copy of it. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I might as well just do it on Word and then just turn it in then.
I can have them turn it in.
Yeah, man. I mean,
I
like,
can return it to you because I just live in. I'll return them all.
well, like I said, I don't need to because I have them backed up. I'm not worried about it. I've already uploaded my old ones there, but the thing that was nice about Drive